Ready to know things that nobody could know. Get ready for Recovery Wednesday with America's original radio psychic, Dr. Linda Salvin, along with Candy Finnigan from the Emmy Award-winning television show Intervention. Candy brings her more than 30 years of experience dealing with all areas of recovery. Listen as Candy and Dr. Linda bring expert guests into the conversation to bring your recovery to the next level. Together, they bring you the tools and techniques that bring balance and serenity to your life. For nearly 30 years as a syndicated talk show host and metaphysical clinician, Dr. Linda has helped thousands of people worldwide solve problems on the air and in person with her insights and solutions. So pull up a chair, turn it up, and get ready for a visit with the one and only Dr. Linda. And now, live from Los Angeles, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Linda Salvin.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Dr. Linda Salvin Show. Now, as I've been talking about for several months, on Wednesdays, we have Recovery Wednesday. And this show is going to include different ideas regarding recovery, since we're all recovering from something, whether it's addiction to alcohol, food, drugs, people, love, sex, shopping, travel, everything to escape what's really going on inside of us is why we indulge our pleasures and become hedonistic in certain areas with regards to what's going on in our world. So I'm going to bring on my friend of over about 37 years, who's very well known in the recovery industry. Her name is Candy Finnigan. You will recognize her, I'm sure, from TV and interviews and radio and podcasts. Let's bring on Candy and say hello to Candy Finnigan. Hi.
Hi, Linda.
Hi, Candy.
So here we are.
We've been planning this for quite a while, and we're going to do this every Wednesday. The show is called Recovery Wednesday, and each week we'll either have a guest or a topic, or we'll give some insight to people, and eventually we'll get the chat going so people can ask questions and you or I can answer. So people know that I'm a psychic healer and a medium. I've been doing radio for 30 years, started on FM radio. You were on my show in the 90s when we were doing cable across the country. And we've known each other a long time as we've grown in our respective careers. And we're in similar but very different mental health, spiritual health, emotional health, being fields. We help people. So why don't you tell people how you help people and how you got started and your background so they get a little acquainted with who you are, and we'll see where we go.
Well, yes, we have been friends for, way over 30 years, which is amazing. And we both kind of chose the same path at different times. Actually, I got into recovery in 1986 and knew that the easier, softer way for me to stay into recovery and to continue the life that I have fought so hard to get was helping other people. And I went back to school. I had an undergrad from Kansas University. That's where I'm from, is Kansas. And I went to UCLA and got a few little initials after my name and started in on the path. And my husband was a rather well-respected musician, and I got involved with a nonprofit called MAP, which is a Musicians Assistance Program, which has now morphed into Music Cares, which is part of the Grammys. And so I would have to say Intervention found me by being able to help and go in and help people get into treatment and help people with mental health and a plethora of different recovery processes. And here I am 31 years later.
And you've done amazing work. You've helped people from all walks of life, all over the country, whether they're hitting bottom in the desert somewhere out in the middle of nowhere in some weird state, or come from wealth, status, or whatever. The disease itself, addiction itself, doesn't choose demographics. It just is something that happens to people regardless of where, who, what we are. And it starts with the mind. It's a mental thing. It's an emotional thing. It can become a physical
thing. It's a
thing.
brain disease, that's for sure.
It's the addiction where the brain craves and talks and needs and is compelled to go after something without the ability to stop on its own. That's been my experience. So, and like I personally, there's food addiction because I've struggled with certain carbs and sugars all my life. And thank goodness now over time, meaning the medical world, the health world, the mental health world, the recovery world has come to recognize that sugar and processed foods can affect people as well as anything else out there, depending on the blood and the serotonin levels and dopamine. And we're all different, but we're all very similar. So when people come to you, is it the family? Is it a person in distress on their own?
It's all different people. If they want a professional intervention, usually the family or a loved one, or even a boss. If it's somebody looking that they don't know what to do, they can't get off of it, and it's usually pain meds and pills when people have just had enough, and so they think that the best laid plan is to get into a detox, and sometimes that would be enough if it's just pills or a certain type of pill. But when you cross that invisible line, as you become mind, body, and soul addicted to this particular drug. And, you can get off that drug and switch to another drug or switch to another behavior. A lot of us are predisposed, and we have a genetic situation.
It's absolutely hereditary. Absolutely. Doesn't it usually skip a generation? Does it skip a generation?
It can skip around to many things. It can skip a generation. It could go to both men in the family, or it could, skip the woman and go to the woman. I mean, it's like, it really just depends on what the dependence is and how you got it. And I'm a big believer that you might have been in a car accident and they've given you pain medication, and you started taking it as prescribed, and then you tried to get off of it and you couldn't. And you suddenly crossed that invisible line, and you're now addicted to this medication. And so you've gone into an addiction. So I think it's, every single intervention or family that I've helped, it's all the same feelings.
But it's the same, but unique.
Well, but all different, because every family is very unique. It's a family disease, no matter how anybody wants to ignore it.
Well, especially with dysfunction or lack of communication or lack of truth or the blame or
lack of truth is a big
yeah, a lot of people don't want to tell the truth, and it's hard.
And they're manipulative, and they're, they're the old liar, cheat, and a thief. You don't have to rob somebody, but you're certainly stealing somebody's trust and heart, As we both know, that those are the people that you try to help. And does it stick? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. I mean, you and I are rather an anomaly at this part of the world. But, relapse is not a part of recovery. It's a part of the disease of addiction. So,
well, a lot of people, I think, are afraid of total success, or afraid to live without the drink or the drug or the cigarette or the fight or whatever. It's moving through that fear of letting go, because what's life like without it as the crutch or the behavior or the substance? Like, teenagers start, and by the time they're in their 20s, they want to stop. It's scary because it's all learned behavior. It's all they know until you let go. Or then you get the people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s with all that life behind them. It's even more difficult because it's all they know. But it can't be done.
Think that, for years and years and years, I really believe that people did not think that it was a mental and brain condition. And so you're just having the drugs, the alcohol, the behavior,
having fun, socializing,
destructive behavior, most likely, you stop that, but there's still a mental condition and they don't get treatment for that. And so I think that you got to treat the whole person, not just the dependence.
And when a lot of people come to me and they'll say, oh, I haven't had a drink in 2 years, I said, being sober is not always sobriety, though. How do you feel? And then they go, well, I've been doing this and doing that, and I don't like this and like that. I said, well, that's where you have to do the work, because even though you've stopped, now the emotions are there, or the feelings are there, or the lack of whatever they're dealing with, and they'll come to me for assistance, or they'll come to you for assistance, because even though they may have stopped, you're still dealing with some of the inner turmoil that has to be fixed, or there will be what we call relapse. Some people can be addicted or alcoholic per se with very little, minimal amounts, and some need tremendous quantities to feel normal or get the buzz or get the addiction kicked in. Everybody's different depending on their tolerance levels, right?
Well, and the periodic is actually the hardest person to treat, because they can pick up a drink, and then the drink takes a drink, and then the drink takes them. So you've got somebody who maybe only started on a Thursday, and they can't stop until maybe Wednesday or Thursday of the final week, and then they can go months without it. And the remorse, but once they pick up that drink again, they're gone. So periodics are very difficult alcoholics because they can always stop. But here's the thing, they can't stay stopped. So that's where getting into recovery. Sobriety is a conscious act. Recovery is a lifestyle. So I believe that, you can do it alone. I don't know how, but I'm sure somebody.
It's a wavy roller coaster is what it is.
Yeah. Because, if you go into a family and you're going to intervene and the father goes, I don't know what the problem is. I drank too much when I was 40 and my boss said I was going to lose my job and I haven't had a drink since. Well, for a man, a lot of times the job is his identity, and, he would do anything not to lose it. But that doesn't mean somebody else has the same dedication to stop. And they can't just, I always say, pull up their bootstraps, because they don't even know where their boots are if they haven't sold them to get drugs. So it's that every case I think feels the same, but it's very different. And these young kids, I was someplace the other day and I was introduced to this girl, and she said, I have 190 days of sobriety. And I went, my God, that's amazing. She said, and I turned 15 yesterday.
Oh, God.
And I thought, what has this poor child gone through that at this stage in
she's
her
already
life,
getting sober at 15?
was having to get sober. It was drugs. And she had overdosed once accidentally, the next time because she was right back into it. And, the fentanyl epidemic, as everybody knows.
It is. It is. Fentanyl is today's.
Don't know what it is or what they're getting, and it's in everything. And it's, so I think that we used to be really cautious. And it took, I can talk from my own experience. It takes a long time to drink alcoholically. I think I started drinking to match my dress when I was, so, if I had on a green dress, I'd have cream to match. I got over it. But I socially drank for many years.
So did I.
And,
college,
and enjoyed it. And, but then, I crossed that line, and, I was constantly going to stop and I couldn't. And, I was able to, in some areas of my life, I had 2 young kids, wiggle alcohol into PTA meetings and, let's just have a glass of white wine. So, it's like, I think it takes a lot longer to hit a real significant bottom with alcohol than it does with drugs. I think, and depending on the drugs, pills could take a while, but the repercussions of it and drugs at this point you just take you a lot faster, and it's a lot more deadly.
This is true. And I mean, we know people who have died with a needle in their arm. We know people who have overdosed on pills. We know people who actually died of, either cirrhosis of the liver or some type of alcohol-related disease, brain disease, blood toxicity.
Finding out that this, it used to be that they had a wet brain, and which is such a horrible thing. But actually, the truth is your brain becomes saturated with alcohol. It doesn't have enough time to dispense, and you're drinking again. You pass out, come to, drink. You might even pass out, come to, drink, pass out. It's a whole system. But alcohol doesn't, leave you as fast as it used to because there's such a big, huge buildup. But now we're of great belief that there is alcohol dementia, there is opiate dementia, and it's from long-term use. And it looks very much, it's just done such damage to you and your brain that there isn't any way to reverse it. And I mean, it's to the point sometimes this dementia gets so extreme that they continue to not know even that they have a drinking problem, and they go back to drinking. So,
that's all they know. It's all what's comfortable, and they don't know they have a problem because that's just who they are, what they do, and they function that way until you take it away or say, no, there's a problem here, and then the freaking out starts. And it's the same thing. I would assume you've worked with pregnant mothers who have given birth to addicted babies. That's a whole nother trauma right there.
Well, I think that you can be on methadone safely, oddly enough. The baby still has to go through detox. But the worst addiction I ever saw as far as birth and new mothers is by far crack. And it was just heart-wrenching to see these little babies crying and crying and crying because there wasn't any really medication that could detox them. They just had to wait to get it out of their system. And all you could really do is just rock them. And I guess I thought that I could, be of some service to I went to actually a hospital in Los Angeles. Several of us did, to rock crack babies, and I did it twice, and I just couldn't do. It was
too much.
So heart-wrenching. And the babies had already been taken away from their mothers and were going into foster care, and I just thought, I need to get to them before this happens, But,
you can't save everybody. I've learned that in my industry. You can't save everybody. People that don't know me, I do psychics, spiritual, metaphysical healing. I work with all levels of problems that come my direction, where Candy's more specialized with the addiction world. And her stories, and we both have stories in helping people, and some that'll stand out more than others. But it's heartbreaking when you hear people coming to you or me that need help. And some of the situations you wouldn't even dream of exist. And then we encounter life on life's terms out there as to what's going on in society, let alone what's going on politically or socially or architecturally, and what's going on financially. Everybody's got a lot happening. It's learning how to juggle and balance. And if you can do it without abusing yourself, you're ahead of the game. But a lot of people, especially with the pandemic, alcoholism went up. Drug addiction.
Well, and so did relapse.
Relapse, that's what I'm saying. Relapse went up. Domestic violence went up. People gained weight. The food, everything changed with the lockdown. And interestingly enough, a lot of stores were closed, but the liquor stores stayed open.
Well, please. And so did, pot shops.
Yep.
We're no fools. I think one of the most interesting interventions I did was years ago. And this woman was very wealthy and lived in Montecito, and sold her house and moved to a trailer in Hope Ranch so that her kids could not come and stay with her because she had 8 of them. And they wanted her to go into a assisted living because this was just a tiny, little trailer, and she was happy there, and we intervened trying to get all 8 kids in that house. I mean, that trailer was enough to do it, but she just wanted to be left alone, and they wanted her to go into assisted living after she went to treatment. So they had the biggest fight at the pre-intervention on who was going to take her to treatment.
And all 8 kids were there?
Oh, all 8 kids were
and
there.
Nobody could arrive at the same decision, so everybody had an opinion.
Yeah. Oh, well, I gave them my opinion and that kind of stuff. So, but
you're the specialist, but they don't always listen to you, do they, Candy?
Well, I would say the families listen to me more than the addict. So, but by that time they've surrendered after they've, been attacked with love. So, care fronting, not confronting people always works. But I had them get a 12-passenger van, and they all got in, and they all drove her to treatment. And several years later, I ran into one of the kids, and she was still sober and living in a lovely assisted living in Santa Barbara. So
wow.
But so there was kind of double entendre there because they didn't want her living by herself, and as I said, it was going from a 7,500 square foot house to a trailer. You got to really want to drink.
Yeah, when you got to go up, and it's no different than somebody smoking a cigarette. Because when I smoked cigarettes, and if I ran out, even if it was 2 a.m, I would look for the butts, because I had to have the nicotine. I had to have the hit. But a lot of people, like, let's use cigarettes as another form of addiction. It's harder to quit smoking often than it is to clean up from heroin.
It was so painful for me.
It is difficult. And what people don't realize, that I learned later, is that the filters are cured in sugar. So you're also withdrawing from sugar, which is the carbohydrate going into the bloodstream. You're inhaling the nicotine and all the strychnine and all the other tobacco and all the other chemicals. And it's the hand to mouth.
Well, it's hiding behind smoke,
That too. We're behind that film.
Well, but it's funny because now that you bring up cigarettes, because a lot of treatment centers are not allowing people to smoke, but you can vape.
Isn't that worse? Aren't they coming out with some studies now that vaping is actually worse and freezing the lungs and doing more damage with the chemicals?
It's nicotine. And so I think you can start at a low dose, and but within no time, it's not enough. Right. And the average person that vapes every 10 minutes. Well, you don't smoke a cigarette every 10 minutes.
No.
And it's metabolized very differently. And now that's not even counting where in the state of California, they cut out all the cotton candy and mango and all
that was last year or the last year and a half. They cut out the flavors, right?
And menthol, by the way.
Oh, the menthol. Okay.
There's no more menthol cigarettes in the state of California.
Wow, I didn't know that.
There is everywhere else. So what you do is you get a sheet of paper that you can buy that's menthol, and you stick it in your pack of cigarettes. So you have menthol cigarettes.
All right. So you're teaching people how to. Wow, that's interesting.
But the thing about it is that you can spend about $400 a month easily on vaping. It depends on if you get the electric kind that you charge and then you put the nicotine in. But after 7 months to 8 months of smoking on a vape, you're up to about enough nicotine for 3 packs a day. But see, we were told that nicotine isn't carcinogenic.
Well, we know, there's your kitty. We know it's a carcinogenic. I mean,
the tobacco and what it's treated with is actually the carcinogenic, but it's very addicting. That's why you don't smoke because of the tobacco. You smoke because of the nicotine.
With the nicotine, and then the cured filters, if you have the filters, and some people are filterless and just roll their own with tobacco. But it gets in those lungs. And I remember it took me, I think, 2 or 3 attempts to stop smoking. I started at 14, but I finally stopped in 2001. So it's about 22 years now. And my pulmonary specialist had told me, because my mother died of lung cancer, as did my aunt, but there's two different types of lung cancer. My mom did not die of the smoking cell. My aunt did. But I made sure that my lungs were clean. And my doctor had said it takes 18 years without smoking for the lung tissue, which when you stretch it all out is the same length as a football field, to heal and repair itself. So technically my lungs are as if I never smoked. And now as an ex-smoker, when somebody does walk by smoking something, whether it's weed or cigarettes, cigars, a pipe, I smell it so quickly and I'm very sensitive to it, and I know you are too, you just get near it and you don't want it. But we lived that for so many years. But the thing is, our generation was all about that.
My OBGYN, when I was pregnant with my daughter, and this is the honest to God truth, I smoked, and I, of course, told him. And he said to me, don't start smoking while you're pregnant because it's too much of a detox and for the baby. And so I smoked. I mean, think about that. And then he said, then you stop because secondhand smoke is worse. I think this guy was kind of a crackpot, but it's like, don't stop smoking. It would be too hard on the baby. And I thought, well, I love you. Thank you.
Do your kids smoke? Do either of them smoke, or did they smoke?
Bridget smokes. My daughter smokes.
I can't remember. I couldn't remember.
Kelly tried it, but he looked ridiculous because he didn't inhale. Well, you know, my stop smoking story was, I'd gotten sober, and I was a little over a year and a half, and my daughter, for her 10th birthday, asked if I would quit smoking.
Oh, no, I don't remember this.
And I said, really? That's all you want for your birthday? How about Barbie? How about a doll?
Barbie.
Yeah. And she said, yeah, because, you were hurting yourself now, because they were learning in school about, cancer and lung cancer and smoking. So I said, well, honey, I'll quit smoking unless there's an earthquake. And at 4:45 on her birthday a.m., there was an earthquake. I grabbed my pack of cigarettes and both kids and went underneath the dining room table and smoked.
Was that the 88 quake?
Yeah. And she was sobbing. And I said, well, I'll quit next week. And I thought there was some magical thing saying, you don't need to smoke. There's an earthquake, but now that's my quit smoking story.
I kind of remember that. It's been a long time since I've heard that, but I remember that earthquake too. I was sleeping when the whole ground shook. That was the
88.
That was 88, like the San Bernardino, whatever they called it, quake. Yeah. And then, of course, we had the 94, and then I lived through the 71. And the day I was born here in LA in January 54, there was a quake. So the day I got here, the earth shook.
Yeah, it was shaking.
So you have a book out, and
Yes,
you have a book called When Enough is Enough. And it's mostly for the family, but a lot of schools have used it, right? Talk about
Well, it's a comprehensive guide to intervention is actually what it is. And when I was on the show Intervention, I got so many requests, and intervention is, in this day and age, it was a lot less expensive 30 years ago, but there are people that charge $22,000 for an intervention, which is, by the way, highway robbery. But I wanted to help as many as I could, and I got all these letters and just asking me if I could help them. And so I wrote this book with my brother-in-law, and it's just a comprehensive guide. It tells you it's a very interesting process. It's
recovery or writing the book?
The intervention. Interventionists make such a big deal out of it. As I said, it was a calling for me. I think it's a very spiritual process. I've never walked into an intervention alone. I bring somebody much larger that knows more than me. that can spiritually guide me, because you're asking a family to tell all of their deep, dark secrets and their shame and their blame and their guilt. So and I've been very trained to do it right. So in this book, it just teaches you how you can do it yourself. There are steps in what you do, and it's an easy read and different examples of different age people, and older people are much harder to intervene on. And so, I started writing it so that I could tell people to buy it when they felt there was no hope, and that I could help them. And it is not a storytelling book.
It's fact. And
it isn't anybody that I'm talking about that I've ever intervened on. And it's there's a couple of caseloads, but they're pretty just straightforward. And then it started being used in addiction schools, like UCLA and Pierce College here in California, when they have addiction studies and they're teaching you, and you're going to school to become a drug and alcohol counselor. And then
Well, stop with that. That reminds me of something. You just brought something up. Let me ask you your opinion. When I'm out, or if I've got a client and I ask what they do, I'm a drug and alcohol specialist, I'm a counselor, I got my certificate. I said, oh, were you ever addicted, or are you in the program? Are you sober? Oh, no, I just want to help people. Do you believe that a person who doesn't really know the pain of an addict can help an addict?
Mm-hmm. I do. And most of them that I know, because I've taught at Pierce with Alan Glass for years. I do a history and a mock-up intervention, and you can see the ones that have the gift and the ones that don't, but everybody should still know the process. And I think that everybody comes from someplace where there wasn't recovery. Could be a grandmother that was an alcoholic. It could be a father who was an alcoholic. It could be a lot of mothers take pills. So I think that, and I think a lot of, master and family therapists and psychiatrists, I wish they would be and go to school, because they know so little about it. And unless you're, there's therapists that do nothing but take recovering people, because by law in the state of California, you may not see a client that is impaired in any way. So all these people that are seeing therapists, and they're alcoholics when they leave, or they're alcoholics when they get there, and take pills and do drugs, therapists should not see them by law because they're impaired. But that doesn't stop them necessarily. But I think that people, and I have a theory, and it's kind of funny, but to me, I sit in these classes, and there are these people that are newly in recovery. You have to be, at least in a lot of good classes that I've been in and taught at, you had to have at least a year of recovery, if not more. Mm-hmm. And so my whole thought is that you've been an addict since you were 17, 16. You're now 30. You've never had a job. So as the old joke is, what are you going to do? You're going to become a drug and alcohol counselor. And there are a lot of them sitting in there. And yes, you're not going to get rich, but you do get to help people. And and it's a tough job, because I did it. And so I think it's a wonderful way to stay sober. I think it's a wonderful way to get burned out too, if they push you so much. There are treatment centers that you go through treatment and then they hire you.
I've heard that, right?
No, let's not do that. Not a good idea. But I think that people who have come from an alcoholic home, if you look at the history of people that are therapists and psychiatrists, and there always was not the happy childhood. It's always they wanted to help other people because they themselves
their own suffering.
Yeah, so I think you all bring something to it. But I know several interventionists that aren't in recovery. but come from an alcoholic family, and nobody ever intervened, and the person died or their brother overdosed, and they, so I think that it maybe still affects them, but doing it because you think it's going to be a good job is not a very good excuse, because it's tough. A lot of people do drop out of school too.
They drop out of school because of drugs and alcohol, or the disease, or they don't want to learn, they don't want to grow, or the fears, or the depression, or pressure. Everybody's got something, and that's why we're doing this show, and we're going to be doing it every Wednesday, because everybody's recovering from something, right?
Absolutely.
So whether it's education,
everybody's recovering from the pandemic now.
That's very true. And there's a lot of stories just coming out of the depression from being locked down, or being isolated, or losing their job.
Well, you've got all these degrees. You went to graduate school.
I did.
Think about if you were in Michigan and you were getting your master's, and you'd worked your fanny off, and it's your last semester getting your master's, and all of a sudden you have to go home and do everything by Zoom, and you don't get to graduate. I mean,
a lot of people got depressed, or watching the ceremonies on Zoom, or they worked all these years for the big culmination. You know what that's like. That was horrifying. What about the planned bar mitzvahs, or the weddings, or the engagement parties, or the birthday parties, or when people couldn't see their loved ones in a hospital and they had to be outside, and they ended up passing away, and they could only see with a video camera. It was a hard couple of years. It was devastating. But
there's a doctor I'm very close with in Houston named Dr. James Flowers. I hope to have him on the show. But he's saying that we all suffer from PTSD now. I know trauma is a real clicky word in my business, but we all have trauma because of it. There isn't anybody that doesn't know somebody that either had it or died from it.
No, that's true. We all went through some type of fearful event. I personally still wonder what's next. I question some of the conspiracies I hear out there versus the facts. And there's such a fine line now. We don't really know. All I know is I keep my faith. I keep my friends. I keep busy. I show up. I do what I have to do. And I have to quiet my mind, because even in this generation, in the year 2023, there's some scary stuff out there. But every generation has some scary stuff. I think we're more susceptible because of technology. And it's in our face 24/7.
Well, when the news went on every day, the first thing that was announced how many people died that day.
It was
millions.
And
and then there's this resurgence, and then you're not being safe, and then it's like.
But mentally, regardless of what happened with the public health system, that's a whole nother topic we can't get into on this network. But as far as the health of people's mind and their sensitivities, or their depressions, or their addictions, to quell the fear, quell the anxiety, quell the unknown, that's where addiction went up. That's when pot sales, alcohol sales, food sales, domestic violence, it just exploded, because people didn't know what to do with themselves, unless there were those that knew how to pray, meditate, and had tools to really get through it, which some people did.
Oh, I agree.
Not everybody, but there are some that okay, we'll get through this, just like other pandemics in the world. What was a doctor friend of mine was saying that after World War II, or was it World War I? I forget now. There weren't prosthetics until the war was over, when somebody decided how to make artificial limbs.
They really came in the Vietnam War because of all the.
Was it the Vietnam? I think it was World War II when it started. All the artistic, but it took disaster to create something positive, and it's the same thing here. Through this weird, I've called it the hallway of transformation, and I published a few articles when we were going through this beginnings of the pandemic with the lockdown. And I saw it as a spiritual event without all the negative connotations and the talking heads on every station and every platform. I mean, everything blew up, online, offline. But if we take it as an opportunity to have transformed and get stronger with our desires, our creativity, our loved ones, for most cases, the animals, sensitivities heightened. At the same time, other things were being deadened. But in the end, if you see that it was the hallway of transformation, we are like having gone through the looking glass. We're not the person or people we were before February 2020. We have morphed. We have changed. Luckily, people like you and me and the station and whoever's watching or downloading in the future, we're still here. So now we have to keep going with new tools to keep ourselves centered and healthy. And when we are under trauma again, or if we are being brainwashed, or if we are being tantalized or being fearful about something, how do we help somebody? They don't have to run to get something to eat or drink or smoke or steal or shop or whatever, to just sit for a minute and get quiet. The old saying, be still for I am God. If we are still within our body, we will learn we don't have to always grab something to self-destruct, because this body's the temple to the soul, and we're still hurting the soul, which needs to be fed, and it gets scared. But we can learn.
Well, and I think that a lot of people who were alone before this hit didn't survive really well through it. I mean, it was a very lonely time for everybody. And then after it, I went to a wedding reception, and it was a rather large one, and everybody had to be COVID tested before they went in.
Right.
You could bring a test and say you were negative, but that didn't go. They had a nurse and tests right there. And, and I thought, oh my God, are you kidding me? But the truth of it is
it was protection.
One person could have it and everybody would have it.
Yeah.
So, I think
we're
more cautious. But then when they opened the floodgates, everything went crazy again.
And well, there's the rise of incidence of cases again. I mean, we're starting to see more. We were talking about this, you and I, just yesterday, that there are more COVID cases again. It's a virus. It's out there. I don't think we're going to see epidemic proportions we did with the pandemic, but there'll be something else. There's always something. But how do you teach somebody to kind of like think it through, even though they're not going to hear the message, but to let's talk about the person that's already not drinking, using, eating, smoking, and they're on the verge of relapse, of just taking that one hit or one something and to get them through that moment or that day.
I think that you can be in relapse for a really long time. I mean, maybe even a year, because, as a dependent, addicted person, you have behaviors, you have mind thoughts, when you're not into recovery, it. It's finding fault with everything and everyone and different situations. And I think that you can correct it. I think you can, if you belong to support groups, I think you can go back and go, 90 meetings in 90 days. I think that you can go to work and then, have friends around. I think you can stay busy. Mm-hmm. I think you can be of service and help somebody else to get out of it. But if you just sit with it, it's not going to go away. It'll just.
Well, we don't go away. We are who we are. We can sit with it and mope, or sit with it
just so you can start over.
Action. Yeah. There's always a new day. There's always a new way to start again. It's not the end of the world. It's just how much you want to be on the roller coaster, or you want to be. Well, you and I know a few people who, no matter what you do, say, offer, help, they're still in that denial.
Or they don't have any other, they haven't been able to apply principles of another way of living. So they have to go back to the only thing that they know to get out of this. And this, horrible haunting that goes on. So, And a lot of people will not look at their mental and emotional.
No, it's always blame, point the
unrest,
finger. It's
right.
their fault. It's their fault. I have some in my own family where I definitely come from dysfunction, and I definitely see it. And you know me well enough. I'll go to Candy, I'll say, this is what's going on with so-and-so, and here's what I text her, this is what I said. Because I'll tell the truth. I will come and tell the truth. I don't hold it in anymore. And for years I would, and that would be one reason why I would either suppress my emotions or whatever, because I didn't want to have my voice. But after a while, you learn you need your voice. I don't like it. I feel better because I'm doing what's right for me.
You can't hold it in. It's poison.
No, it is. And a lot of people out there don't understand that yet. Thank you. We got a few minutes left before we wrap up for today. But a lot of people are so afraid to go inside to tell, like, oh, I was molested, I was raped, I did drugs, I slept with his wife. There's
so much
guilt, shame, fear. We all have done things. Nobody lives life like Barbie. Even Barbie has problems.
Well, Barbie has some problems.
Barbie has flat feet now.
Well, I think she got her arch back, but
yes, she did. If you haven't seen the movie, folks, this is just a plug because Candy and I went to see it. It was great.
And I'm telling you, neither one of us knew what we were walking into. I'm too old to have Barbies, and my daughter didn't like them. But I'll tell you, when we walked out of there, and we both looked at each other, and we had a slight deficiency of pink. But the world is now pink over here in LA.
Everything's pink. You were wearing your pink tennies.
And it was great fun. It was great.
But the message of being okay and who we are, like we can all be a Barbie, we can all be a Ken. We're all human. We're all frail. We're all intelligent. We all have potential. We all have love. We all have emotion. It's just a beautiful message, and that's what we try to bring here.
And
with
it's
this
cute,
show.
and it's pink.
It's very pink. It's very pink, like my nails. It's very pink. Candy, how can people get a hold of you if they need help with recovery? It'll be shown on the back end of the outro. It'll be on the little tag here.
Well, for right now, I'm redoing my website, and you could contact me that way. But, for right now, you can just contact me at Candy Finnigan at AOL. You can contact me on Facebook at Candy Finnigan. Just because if you knew my life, I'm not going to give out my phone number because I have enough calls. But I will get back with you and answer you if there's any way I can help you.
And if people want to reach out to me, it's Dr. Linda at lindasalvin.com, DRLINDA. Or you could go to my website, lindasalvin.com. And with the shows, you can just go to drlindaradio.com and listen live, or go back and hear the replays. The shows, of course, are going to be archived on all the different platforms. So you can always revisit, and you can always contact us off the air. And we will come back next Wednesday, whatever day it is that you're listening, it doesn't matter, but we will record the show. If you would like to become a part of it, or you want to contribute and you want to be part of the chat, pop up, people. We would love to interact with you. We have Rebel, who's in Louisiana, working the boards, and when chat comes through, she'll let us know, and we'll be able to interact. So let's make it interactive. Let's help you help yourself or a loved one in your family. And we will be having guests down the road, some that have gone through their own experiences, or some that are professionals that Candy works with, or who knows? It's all up in the air because it's the journey that we're on together. And I want everybody to be a part of it. Candy and I have both devoted our lives to helping people just like you. There's nobody who's not recovering from something. Right, Candy Finnigan?
You got it.
Okay, Rebel, I think that's good enough to say see ya, everybody. Until next time. See you on the radio. Again, stay tuned and watch the channels, and we're here for you. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
God bless.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed Recovery Wednesday. You can reach Dr. Linda at 888-509-1077 or at lindasalvin.com, and Candy Finnigan at candyfinnigan@aol.com. Need a breakthrough of your own? Ready for answers or insights nobody else has? Reserve your own one-on-one in-person chat. Dr. Linda isn't just for other people. Dr. Linda gets results for you. And it's easy. Contact details are on screen now. Just click on lindasalvin.com or call toll-free 888-509-1077. That's lindasalvin.com or toll-free at 888-509-1077.